Welcome to, I guess, the first full business week of the new year. It's going to be a very interesting year. You know, I sense a lot of nerves out there amongst agents and people in the business, as well as obviously the public. And I've been doing this for 30 years. And as much as some of you might think that, well, there's good reason to be nervous, I'm here to tell you that personally, I'm not. Only because I know that there will be plenty of business for those who approach the business the right way. We have a tendency to get what we focus on. And if we focus on challenges, if we focus on scarcity, if we focus on basically the wrong things, then that's what we're going to get, the wrong things. And if we'll focus on the outcomes that we want and what it takes to get those outcomes, regardless of what's going on out there in the world and in the market, we're going to get great results. There will be enough business for all of you on this Zoom call to do more business than you've ever done. But the key to that is, of course, being a person that you've never been before. And when I say that, meaning I'm assuming that each one of you have probably come up with a goal in terms of production, in terms of income that is higher than you have ever had. And if that's not the case, my question would be, why not? Because what I don't want anybody to do on this call, or anybody that I talk to, anybody that I'm coaching, somehow think that because what's going on out in the market today is an excuse to do less than what you've ever done before. I firmly believe that you can do more than you ever have in this market that we're in 2023, but we have to become more than we've ever become. I consider you fortunate, and of course I consider I'm fortunate as well, but I want to say specifically, I believe that each and every one of you are fortunate that you're part of a company that by choice focuses on the right things and is willing to talk about the things that actually matter, as opposed to the things that I believe are distractions. Most brokerages, gang, will focus on the things that are truly distractions, that in the end of the day, don't make a substantial difference in who you are, who you become, and ultimately the life that you want to create for yourself, including the sort of production that you want and the income that you want in real estate. Companies get to choose what their values are, their principles, their philosophies, their standards. And when George and I started the company back in 2009, coming up on 14 years, we were really clear about what we were going to focus on, consciously, by choice. Not just that we were going to be a real estate brokerage that worked with real estate agents, but we were going to focus on things that would help people become more so that they could do more and have more. And, I think about just this year and without knowing each of your goals, all I know is that the number one thing that you're each going to have to be really consistent at this year is your prospecting. And if you're not willing to be consistent at that, and definitely more consistent than you've ever been, then you won't make more money than you ever have. And it will be a very difficult year, guaranteed. So I will give you that if you're not willing to prospect more, that it's going to be a very difficult year. But really, let's be honest. Most years are difficult if you're not willing to prospect. But this year, it will be difficult if you're not willing to prospect and prospect to a higher degree than you ever have. Now, there isn't any one of you on this call who can't prospect more. That's true. And, you might say that you don't have the time. And, I would say that's a polite little lie to say that you really just don't want to make the time to do it. So I always ask this question, what causes people to resist something that's so important? Because if I were to ask each one of you, is prospecting integral to your success in real estate? Each one of you would say on a very logical level, yes, of course it is. So then the question is, why do we resist prospecting to the level that we do? Where does that resistance come from? So I want that to be not just a rhetorical question. I want to hear from you guys what the answer is, because there's a one word answer to it. What is that answer? What causes us to be so resistant to prospecting? Okay, I'll wait. I got time. Okay, Quinn says scared of failure. And that is the answer to the $64,000 question. It is fear. That is the answer, Quinn. So thank you for giving the answer. So I just want you to think about this. Just listen to me as I say this. I asked the question, where does fear come from? Here's the answer. Fear comes from a lack of understanding. I want you to write that down. Fear comes from a lack of understanding. Just think about that in your life. The things that you tend to be afraid of are the things that you don't understand fully. And let me develop that for all of us. So fear comes from a lack of understanding, and a lack of understanding leads to a lack of control. So if we don't understand something, we don't understand a process, then it makes us feel like we're not in control. And then if we feel like we're not in control, then that leads to a sense of uncertainty, and specifically an uncertainty of outcome. So a lack of understanding leads to a lack of control, and a lack of control leads to uncertainty of outcome. So it's obvious that if we have a lack of understanding, and there's a sense of a lack of control, or there's literally a lack of control, at least to the level that we want it, and therefore there's uncertainty of outcome, of course we're going to be afraid of that process. Yes or yes, gang? Tell me that makes sense, because in my mind it does. So tell me in yours that it does. Give me an amen, or a yes, or absolutely, or spot on, or something.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Yes. I mean, gang, look, if you are resisting prospecting, it comes from fear. That's all it is, because we know that prospecting is the lifeblood of real estate. And just like breathing, you would not dare not to breathe. I mean, if I asked you to hold your breath, you would hold it for a certain period of time until you got to the point where you're going to pass out. Some of you may, in fact, pass out, but then your body is going to take over. Your brain's going to take over and say, no, we got to breathe. Because if we don't breathe, we're going to what? We're going to die. Well, I watch a lot of real estate agents let their business die. They don't prospect. In other words, breathe. That's the oxygen. Prospecting is the oxygen of real estate. And they let their business die. Well, so see, it's unlike breathing, where you literally, you don't have a choice, because your body's going to kick in and say, nope, we're going to breathe. We're not going to let you die. So unfortunately, we don't have the ability to say, on a conscious level, well, we're not going to prospect, but then subconsciously our brain takes over and our physiological, systems take over and force us to breathe. It doesn't work that way. So in other words, we got to operate from a conscious level about this and ask, why don't I prospect? And it always comes down to, gang, I'm just telling you, a lack of understanding, a lack of control, and ultimately a lack of certainty of outcome. Because here's the thing, if you absolutely knew that when you prospected, you were going to have great conversations in large part, and you were going to set a lot of appointments, and you were going to do a lot of business from it. If you absolutely know that, I don't mean just on a logical level, but in your hearts, in your heart of hearts, that you knew deep down inside that every time you prospected, that on average, you were going to have great conversations, set a lot of appointments, and do a ton of business, there isn't any one of you who would avoid that process. But the only reason we avoid the process goes back to what I said, a lack of understanding, which leads to a sense of lack of control, which then leads to a sense of uncertainty. And none of us wants to be involved in a process where there's a lack of understanding, a lack of control, and then uncertainty of outcome. So then what's the solution to that? Well, the solution to that is to increase our understanding. Increase our understanding so that there's increased control. Just think about that. Anything that you, in your life, where you have a high degree of understanding in it, I guarantee you, you have a high sense of control in that area, in that arena, whatever that thing is, which then leads to an increase in certainty of outcome. And when there's an increase in certainty of outcome, then there's an increase in the consistency of that activity. So I just want you to think about that. Come up with something in your life where you have a high degree of understanding about it. You're really good at it. And as a result, there's a high degree of control in that thing when you do it. And there's a high degree of certainty when you do it, certainty of outcome. And as a result, you don't even think twice doing that thing. In fact, what you probably find is that you actually really enjoy it. And therefore, you try to do it more often than not. You go out of your way to do that thing. Can you think of something in your life that is that way? I mean, for some people, they'd say, for example, it's skiing. For some people, it's getting on a bicycle. For some people, it's public speaking. I love to speak in public. There used to be a day, man, where there was absolute fear fear that came from a lack of understanding of the process, what a great presentation looked like. And then because of that, a lack of control, that I would stand up there. I felt like I didn't control the process. And then that led to an uncertainty of outcome. And well, that meant that if I wasn't certain of the outcome, what I knew was going to happen, it was going to be failure. And I didn't want to engage in any activity where there was going to be failure. So I tried to avoid it as much as possible. So I just want you to think about that. So what would lead us to prospect more? Well, in my opinion, the number one thing that you can do in 2023 to enable yourself to prospect more, to be more consistent, is to be better at the listing conversation, to be a better presenter when it comes to the listing conversation. And here's why I say that. Because if you're a great presenter, a great communicator when it comes to the listing presentation, I know that you can be a great prospector, because everything that you need to be and do in a great listing conversation, you have to do the same thing in a conversation with a prospect to set an appointment to list a home, or for that matter, to get somebody to sit down with you and sign a buyer broker agreement. The number one thing that you can do to increase your understanding and your certainty in terms of control of the outcome in prospecting is to become a great presenter, a great conversationalist when it comes to the listing presentation. So I want to talk about that. I just want to make certain that we review this very quickly. Some of you are going to say, well, I know this, which is fine. Some of you are going to say, I think I know it. And some of you are going to say, my heavens, I am so glad we're covering this. And I don't care which of the three you are. All I know is that, gang, this has to be our focus in 2022, because if we're great at this and we understand this, then everything else is going to fall in line. But if we don't have absolute certainty when it comes to having a conversation with sellers, this will be a very, very difficult year. With the shift in the market, we have got to get really good at working with sellers. And the way to start that is to recognize the first rule when it comes to this whole conversation is that the listing presentation really isn't even a presentation, gang. It is a conversation. I want you to write that down. In fact, my admonition to you, my command to you, my wish from you is this, is that you stop calling it a listing presentation. You know, don't say to people, say to prospects, hey, can I come out and you know, give you a listing presentation, or come out and give you my listing presentation. You can call it a presentation if you want to. You can frame it that way. But all I know is this, that most people don't like to give presentations, and most people don't like to listen to presentations. Aside from dying, the number one fear of people is giving a presentation. How many of you actually like to give a presentation? So when you look at it as a presentation, there's a lot of resistance to it. And if you know that by prospecting successfully, you set an appointment, you got to go out and give a quote unquote presentation, well, you're probably not going to want to be very good at prospecting, because you really don't want to go out and give a presentation. But if you are really good at having a conversation, and you know that prospecting leads to appointments where you get to go out and have a great conversation with people, you're more likely to want to set appointments. So you're more likely to engage in the activity, and you're also going to be better at it. You're going to project much better energy. And as a result, the people you present to or have conversations with, more specifically, are going to respond much differently than they otherwise would. Does this make sense? Please say yes. This is so important. It's about your mindset.
Yes.
I want you to think about this, gang. You cannot give to people what you don't possess. See, if you want people to feel safe and secure and confident, well, then you've got to feel safe, secure, and confident. And when you're prospecting, or when you're having a conversation with people, whether it's on the phone or at their door or at their kitchen table, and you don't feel safe and you don't feel confident, how can you expect them to feel that way? You're the leader. You're the one that's suggesting that this whole thing happen, that they work with you. So again, the number one rule in all of this is it is not a presentation, it is a conversation. That is a very important change in our mindset. Because here's the thing, there isn't any one of you who isn't great at a conversation. I know you are. Every one of you on this Zoomcast, right? You've all had multiple conversations today with people, whether they are loved ones or friends or even strangers, you've had great conversations with them. The challenge is we get in this mode of, oh, I've got to give a presentation, and I don't like presentations, and I hate public speaking, and we don't distinguish between presentations with one person or 500 people. It's all the same. It's scary. I don't like to give presentations. Well, stop calling it a presentation. It's not. It's a conversation. Simplify it, because it is. It's pretty simple. Here's the second rule. Great conversations are nothing more than a pattern of the right behavior. In other words, it's just a formula. It's just a pattern of behavior. It's just step one, step two, step three. It's a formula. And like any formula, if you recognize it, you practice it, you understand it, you leverage it, you're going to get great results. And in fact, here's what formulas do for us, gang. Formulas give us predictability and duplication of outcome. Just think about that. A well understood formula gives us predictability and duplication of outcome, as long as we leverage it. Now, if you don't leverage it, it's not going to do that for you. See, for a lot of people, they do what they've always done. They've got a formula, but it's the wrong formula. The formula is, well, I've got to give a presentation. And then the formula that they use in terms of presentation is the wrong one, so they get the wrong outcomes. But if you'll recognize that it's not a presentation, it's a conversation, and then treat it as a conversation, structure it as a conversation, then you're going to get predictable and duplicable results that you want, that will lead to a high degree of appointments set, a high degree of appointments attended, and a high degree of contracts signed. Now, how many of you want that? How many of you want to set a lot of appointments, attend a lot of appointments, and get a lot of contracts signed? I'm assuming in every one of you, yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Jeremy says yes.
Yes.
Quinn says yes. I love it.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you. Good. Luz, thank you. So let's just review what the listing conversation looks like. It's pretty simple. You know, I've watched in my 30 years real estate agents try to complicate this. No, gang, it's not that complicated, Nancy. Thank you. It's not. If you look at the listing conversation, it really has just two parts to it. So I want you to write that down. There are two parts to it. In fact, if you would, just on your notes, if you're taking notes, which I hope you all are, just do Benjamin Franklin's T-graph, right? So you've got a horizontal line, and then right through the center of that horizontal line, right in the middle of it, just do a vertical line. So you've got a big T or a big cross, right? And then on the left hand, yep, what's that?
We got it. The T.
Cool. All right. So on the left-hand side, what I want you to do is write the words choose me. On the left-hand side, the upper left-hand top of that cross or that T-graph, I want you to write choose me. That's the first part of the listing conversation. All we're trying to do in the first part is get them to choose us, to get the seller to choose us versus the competition. Now, the question is, how do we get them to choose us? Well, we have to separate ourselves from the competition. So I want you to write that down. How do we get people to choose us? Well, we've got to separate ourselves from the competition. Well, how do we do that? Here's the answer to that. We have to build rapport and we have to build value. So write that down. See, the first part of the listing conversation is to choose me. And how do we do that? We have to separate ourselves from the competition. And how do we do that? We build rapport and we build value. So now how do we do that? How do we build rapport and value? Gang, what do you think? Those of you who've heard me talk about this ad nauseum, because it's one of my favorite topics, because I know how important it is, how critical it is to your success. What do you think the answer is to that? Yes, Quinn, that is the answer. Ask fantastic questions. In fact, this is how I say it. I want you to think about this, and I want you to write it down just as I say it. Ask well-designed questions to accomplish an intended outcome. Ask well-designed questions to accomplish an intended outcome. So if I have some predetermined questions that I've designed to accomplish a very specific outcome, which in this case, within the context of the listing conversation, what is my intended outcome? What do I want to accomplish at the end of a listing conversation? What's the goal? What's the end goal? What is it?
Getting them to sign?
Yes, get them to sign the listing agreement, Luz, that's it. And Quinn, of course, yes, your answer is correct as well. Get them to sign the listing agreement. So that first part, we need to be focused on that specifically. You might say, well, John, this, of course, duh, yes. Well, yeah, that it might be obvious, but then anything is obvious, you know, at first blush or at, 35,000 feet. Then as you get into the weeds, you get granular, then it starts to get a little more complicated. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But let's demystify it, because this doesn't have to be a mystery. And it is not that complicated. Again, let's not overcomplicate this. So in that first part of the listing conversation on that left-hand side, let me give you just the basic outline. It's number one, I want you to write down TAP or TAP.
In which quadrant, John?
Just on that left-hand side under choose me, just write down number one, TAP.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, those of you who have been part of this conversation before, what does TAP stand for?
Thank you, appreciate,
Thank you.
and promise.
Close, almost, Quinn.
Acknowledge.
Yes, acknowledge. Yep. And you say appreciate. Yes, I would argue that we could say that it's the same thing, but thank you, acknowledge, and promise. Those three things. Okay. Now, the key to that is this. Let me ask you this question. This is really important. When does the listing conversation start? When does it start? It's really important.
The second you walk in the door.
Okay.
First contact.
Okay. And yes, I would say yes. My answer is first contact. When you're on the phone, you've agreed with them that you're going to meet for an appointment, and you take the opportunity in that conversation to pre-qualify them and ask them questions about their situation. Okay. In other words, ask discovery questions to learn more. Okay. When you ask those questions and learn more about their situation, take notes so that when you then meet them at the front door and you're walking to the kitchen table and you sit down at the kitchen table, you can do that first thing that I just asked you to do, which was number one, to thank, acknowledge, and promise. See, what most real estate agents will do when they meet the sellers is they'll say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I appreciate the time to meet with you. And I'm excited to help you get your home on the market and get it sold. Well, that's fine. And I look at that as really just a time filler. It's just something that you can say to transition from the front door to sitting down, or sitting down, and it's a transitional statement to get into what you would consider your quote unquote presentation is. Well, that's a missed opportunity. I look at the thank you, acknowledgement, promise, that first part, as an opportunity to build rapport, to acknowledge them. Remember, the choose me phase is about building rapport. So the best way to build rapport then is to make certain that we acknowledge people, to make certain that they know that we've listened to them and what's important to them. So if we ask questions over the phone before we get there and write down their answers in terms of what they're doing, what their situation is, and some of the things that they're concerned about, and then when we meet them at the house and we recall those things, then it's more likely that we're going to immediately begin to build rapport and offer value than if we just simply say, thank you for your time and I appreciate it. And I'm excited about getting your home on the market, getting it sold. Versus if I said to somebody, let's just assume that I discovered all of this over the phone before I met, and I said something like this. I said, oh my gosh, Quinn, I am so excited. Thank you for meeting with me. I know you've had a ton of calls and you were very frustrated with the calls you were getting and the fact that your home was on the market for 6 months and it didn't get sold. And you're even wondering if you can actually get it sold in today's market. And here's what I promise you. Not only can we get your home sold, but we're going to get you to St. George in the time that you want to. And this is going to happen. I promise you that, as long as you follow my lead. So are you ready to get started? And of course, Quinn is going to say what? What's he going to say?
Absolutely.
Well, he's not only going to say absolutely, he's going to say hell yeah, because everybody else that I've talked to has disappointed me. And the last agent I worked with didn't get my home sold. And John, you right out of the gate are acknowledging all of my concerns and the things that have happened to me and the things that I want. And you're promising me right out of the gate that you can do it. I've never seen this sort of leadership or confidence before. I kind of like this. In other
Well,
words-
again, they
Yeah,
might
go
say,
ahead.
they might
that?
say, well, I'd love to go forward, but I'm still concerned about, and so something that you may not have addressed or they brought up would come up, and then you recycle the whole process until you clear all those out. And then the response is what you said.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. What we have to do is make certain that they heard, that we heard what they said. So in other words, they need to know that we listened to what they said. The number one human need is acknowledgement or acceptance, or to be heard or understood. So when they share things with us and we write those things down and then we recall those things, mention those things in later conversations, they go, oh my gosh, Quinn actually cares about me. Luz cares about me. Brenda Lee cares about me. They actually listen to what I said. Now, they may not on a conscious level think that, but subconsciously they're feeling that. They feel safe and secure. They feel a lot more confident in letting you take control and taking the lead. So thank you, acknowledgement, promise. The listening conversation begins over the phone. Gather that information as much as you can. So then when you sit down with them, you can recall and say, my gosh, thank you so much for meeting with me. I know that you're frustrated. I know that you're scared. I know that you're excited. Whatever emotions they expressed, fear, excitement, anxiety, whatever, acknowledge that. Use some of their words. And then promise them that not only do you understand their situation, but you know what it's going to take to help them get to what next level or step in their life they're trying to get to. Whether it's downsizing, upsizing, job transfer, financial downsizing, whatever. That you understand and you know exactly what it's going to take to get their home sold so you can help them move on to the next chapter of their life. The second part is this. Number two, gang, is write this down. It's the game plan or the roadmap. Now, this is really important. If I said to all of you, I said, gang, let's go. Come on, get in my car and let's go. And let's assume that I had a car big enough to put you all in. Let's say that's a Class A motorhome, right? Your first question is what? When I say, come on, let's go, what are you going to ask?
Where are we
Where are we
going?
Yeah, where are we going? So see, just gang, recognize it's a very basic human need to know where are we going. When you sit down with these people in this conversation, they want to know, okay, where are we going with this thing? What is Quinn going to talk about? What's the gist here? What are the things that we're going to accomplish? You need to let them know that. If you will, they're going to be a lot more patient. They're going to be more attentive, and they're going to be a lot more impressed with the conversation with you than they otherwise would be. So step number 2 in the choose me phase or part section is to give them a game plan or what I call a roadmap. So this is what I would do. I would start out by saying, here, let me look. Let's see here. I would say, Caesar, oh my gosh, thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me. I know that the process of choosing an agent to meet with was very frustrating with you. And the fact that your home was on the market for 6 months and it didn't get sold, that you got a lot of anxiety. You mentioned some fears about whether you can even get the home sold, despite the fact that you guys really want to move to St. George. And I promise you this, that not only are we going to work through all of that, but you're going to, by the time we're done, you're going to know exactly what it's going to take to get your home sold and that I'm the right agent for the job of getting your home sold. So are you ready to get started? And then he says, what? What do you say to that, Caesar?
Of course.
Yes. And then I say, great. Having said that, if I could, let me just give you a game plan or kind of what I call a roadmap of what we're going to accomplish with our conversation this evening. Could I just do that very quickly, give you a game plan? And of course, Caesar's going to say what?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So the first thing that I want to do, Caesar, is this. I just want to revisit and maybe talk a little bit more about, number one, what's caused you to decide to sell your home and really what's happening next with your family. And then number two, I want to talk with you about what you expect me to do as a top agent in terms of the activities to actually get your home sold. Because I believe that you probably have some expectations as to what an agent should do in today's market to actually get a home sold. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. So I just want to make certain that we're having that conversation. And then once we do that, then we're just simply going to talk about the market, where it is, where it's been, and where it's going over the next 60 to 90 days. And then you and I are going to work together as a team to determine the value of your home in today's marketplace. And then we're just going to finish some paperwork so we can get your home on the market and get you and your family to St. George. So you ready to get started?
Yay.
Yes.
Now that's the thank you, acknowledgement, and promise. And then I give you the
Well,
roadmap.
we're gonna do paperwork. I mean, I'm not sure. I've got some other agents coming by and, you know, I don't think we're ready to sign papers today.
You know what? And was that Rebecca saying that?
Yeah, I just.
Rebecca? Yeah. So Rebecca, how I'd respond to that would be, Rebecca, that's great. So what I really hear you saying is that you're definitely excited about the conversation. You have a lot of unanswered questions and you don't feel like you're ready to sign any paperwork. And you know what? If I were you, I'd feel the same way too. I mean, my heavens, we haven't talked about ultimately in great detail what you and your family are trying to accomplish. And
Yeah,
I think
right.
also, right. And also importantly, we haven't talked about what you want me to do and what you believe I should be doing to actually get your home sold so that we can get you and your family to St. George, right?
Yeah, we're just so tired of agents that, you know, promise all this crap and they never follow through. And here we are, you know, we should have been there.
It
months
is
ago.
frustrating, isn't it? And you know what? I can hear your frustration, and you have a right to be frustrated. So this is what I'm excited about. You and I are going to have that conversation. By the time we're done, that frustration is going to be gone. You're going to feel comfortable and confident that I am the right agent to help you get to St. George.
Really?
Yep. I
Okay.
promise you that. And
Today?
that's why I'm so excited. And
Wow.
I'm so excited because I know that while your home was on the market for 6 months, my company sold over 3,000 homes. Now think about that. We sold 3,000 homes, and how many homes do you need to sell?
One.
So it seems to me that if we
So
can sell
all the-
3,000,
My
you can
last
sell
agent
yours, right?
sell one and you're selling 3,000. But that's your whole company. I mean, how do I know that you can do it?
Well, it's a great question because I use the same formula, the same process that my company uses to sell those 3,000 homes because we are trained consistently, coached consistently on a proven formula to get homes sold. That's why we have the #1 office in the world for Century 21. That doesn't happen by chance, right?
3,000 homes, was that in the last 6 months?
Yes. 3,000 homes in the last 6
Serious.
months.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said serious. Wow. Okay.
Serious. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Right.
It's kind of exciting. So it actually shows that we can actually get you to St. George in the time that you want, right?
Wow. Let's get on with this then.
That's what I'm talking about. So then what I would do, gang, is then I would, now that I've done the tap and then the game plan or roadmap, and in the game plan or roadmap, I talked about we're gonna have 2 conversations. We're gonna talk about ultimately what they're trying to accomplish in the sale of the home, you know, what's happening next. And then number 2, what they believe that I should be doing in terms of activities to get the home sold. We're gonna have those conversations. So these are the 2 questions I would ask, and I want you to write down these 2 questions just as I say them, because I want you to commit these questions to memory. The first question is this. So it would be, let's just say that the seller's name is Rebecca. I would say, Rebecca, if you could share with me what caused you to decide to sell your home. So Rebecca, share with me what caused you to decide to sell your home, ...
Oh, all our kids are
Not
raised.
yet. Well, Rebecca, hold on, time out. It's not all. Hold on. So it's share with me what caused you to decide to sell your home, ... What's happening next? Okay, so what's happening next?
You want me to answer that?
Not yet.
Okay.
So, but I do appreciate you being interactive. I love it. So it lets me know that I'm not alone. So, because sometimes I do these and it's like, is anybody there? Hello.
Okay,
So-
we're back on the list.
Yeah. So that is the primary question that I begin with in the listing conversation when I sit down with somebody at the listing table. Now you may say, well, John, what if you already know some of that? Well, that's great. Then I'm going to recount the things that I already know. If I know that she's moving to St. George, I'm not going to say, so share with me what's caused you to decide to sell your home. And she looks at me and she said, well, in her mind, she's thinking, I already told this guy I'm moving to St. George. Well, that's not a good thing. Then she's going to feel like she's not being what? Heard. So if I already know she's moving to St. George, I'm going to say, so Rebecca, you shared with me over the phone that you're moving to St. George. So if you could tell me a little bit more about that, what's taking you to St. George? In other words, I want to dig deeper and give her an opportunity to tell her what. She has a what to tell.
A story.
Needs.
My
Story.
reasons.
She has a story to tell. We all have a story to tell. And if we give people an opportunity to share their story and they know that we what?
Care.
We listen, then we meet their number one human need, which is acknowledgement, which is acceptance, which is validation. And how do we feel about people who acknowledge us, who validate us, who accept us?
We
We
love.
like-
We like them, yes. And that is rapport. And that's what we're trying to build in this portion of the conversation is greater rapport. Because if we have rapport, they like us, they trust us, they respect us, they're going to be willing to have more open and honest conversations, right? They'll feel safer, they'll feel more certain. And when we ask them to sign an agreement, is it more likely that they're going to sign the agreement if they feel that way? And the answer is what? Resoundingly what?
Yes.
Yes, yes. So we start with that question. So share with me, what's caused you to decide to sell your home? What's happening next? And then they give their answers. And because we're already over time, we're not going to role play that, but you would role play that with them, right? I mean, you would have that conversation with them, and then they give answers, and you can dig deeper. You say, that's great. Tell me more about that. Is there anything else, right? In other words, give them an opportunity to share what's going on in their life that's causing them to do this significant thing, which is selling their home. Then once you've had that conversation, let them know, of course, that you heard. So repeat some of the things that were new or you didn't know. Repeat it back to them so that they knew that you listened and that it was important for you to hear it. And then once you do that, then you transition from that to Nancy, I'm not certain because gang, can you all hear me? Nancy's saying she can't hear.
I can hear you.
I
Yeah,
can hear-
Nancy, I think it's on your end. It might be your connection. You might want to switch to Wi-Fi, or if you're on Wi-Fi, get off of Wi-Fi. Okay.
Or go
So-
out and come back in.
Oh yeah, or you could log out and get back in. So once we have that conversation, right, we kind of sum up what we learned, what we talked about within the context of that question. Share with me what's caused you to decide to sell your home, what's happening next. Then we use a transitional statement of, well, as important as that is, or having said that, or now that I know that, let me ask you this question. What do you believe? What are your expectations in terms of the things that I should be doing on a daily basis to get your home sold so we can get you and your family to St. George? Now, you might say, well, John, why would you ask them that? I mean, we're the professional. We know what needs to be done. Why wouldn't we just tell them what we're going to do so that they can hear that? And my answer to that question is because I don't know what's important to them. And rather than me assuming that I know what is important to them, I'm going to ask them what's important. Because if I will discover what they believe is important, and then I talk about those things, then it's more likely that I'm going to build what? Because there are two things we have to build in the listing conversation. We have to build rapport, and what's the second thing? Because this is a business relationship. It's not a friendship, it's a business relationship. What's the other thing that we have to offer in this transaction where they're going to pay us money?
Value.
Value.
Value. That's right. So if we know what is of value to them in terms of what they expect in the experience, then we can address those things. But see, this is what most agents do, gang. Most real estate agents will say, well, let me share with you all the great things that I do and my company does in order to get homes sold. And then they will share their 21-point plan of action because they're a Century 21 agent. It's a great, it's a great gimmick. I'm going to show you 21 things that I do. And I guess if we were Century 100, they'd want to share 100 things. I don't understand that logic. It's like 21. Why isn't it 17? Or why isn't it 32? It's like, gang, it's a gimmick. All I want to do is I want to take the open book test, not the closed book test, the open book test. When you were a kid in school and your teacher gave you an opportunity to take a closed book or an open book, which one did you take? Hopefully you took the open book because the answers were in the book. Well, the answers are there with the seller. The seller will give you the answers. You'll just simply ask. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, share with me, what are the things that you believe I should be doing that are important in today's market to actually get a home sold today? And then let them tell you. And if their response is, I don't know, you're the expert, you tell me, then my response to that is going to be, you know what? You're right, and I appreciate that. But let me ask you, if you were to guess at things that might be important, what do you think would be important? And if they don't come up with any guesses, then this is what I'm going to still do. I need to give them an opportunity to give me an answer. So I'm going to say, I would do this. If they still didn't come up with an answer, I'm going to say, well, let me ask you this. Do you believe communication would be important? And of course, their answer is going to be what?
Yes,
Oh,
communication.
really?
Yes, communication is going to be important. Or if I ask them this, well, let me ask you this. Do you think that marketing is going to be important? And their answer is going to be, of course, yes, right? Or if I say, well, what about the agent's ability to negotiate? Would that be important? And their answer is going to be yes. That is a much different process than me just simply saying, let me talk to you about how I communicate, how I negotiate, and how I market. You might say, well, John, it seems to be the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. Because see, what I want to do is I want to talk about things that were their ideas. Because if I talk about things that were their ideas and their expectations, and I meet those expectations, I'm going to build the two things that we need to build in the choose me phase in order for them to move on to the paperwork. And what is that? What are the two things we have to build in the choose me phase?
Rapport,
Rapport and, because it's a business transaction,
trust.
value.
Value.
Yeah.
Value.
So see, if I'm following this process, gang, I promise you this, you'll build more rapport and you'll build more value. So that by the time you ask these questions about, well, is marketing important to you? Is communication important to you? And then you address those conversations, those topics with them, they're more likely to want to sign the contract when it comes time to sign the contract. But this is what I do. Let's just role play this one. We're almost done, 5 minutes and we're done. So thank you for letting me go over. Let's just role play one of many things that we could talk about. Let's just say, for example, that the prospect, the seller says to me, well, I don't know, you're the expert, you tell me. So then my response would be, you know what, you're right, I am. And the good news is that, my company last year sold nearly 6,000 homes, so we know how to sell homes. But let me ask you this, if you had to venture a guess, what do you think would be important? What do you think an agent should be doing in today's market to get a home sold? And they may very well not have an answer. They may say, I really don't know. Then my response is to be, that's okay. Let me ask you this. Would communication be important? And I've never had somebody say to me, nope, that's not important. They always say, yes, it would be. Then my response, and this is really important, don't miss this. My response is going to be, great, share with me. What do you think is important about it? Because again, gang, I want this to be their idea. This isn't my topic, it's theirs. See, if I ask them, is communication important? And they say yes, and then I tell them all the reasons why communication is important and why I'm a great communicator and the things that I do to be a great communicator, it's all my idea. But if I will ask them, is communication important? And they say yes, and then I say, Greg, tell me more about that. When you say that it's important, what do you mean by that? Then they begin to own that topic. They begin to own that expectation. And then when they own it, and then I deliver to them how I am going to be a great communicator, the things that I would do to meet their expectations, then what I've done is I have built I've met their expectation as it relates to communication, and therefore I've offered them what? It's a business transaction, and I have to offer this. I offered them what? Value. Right. So let's just role play this very quickly, Quinn, so everybody sees it, and we'll wrap this up. So I'm going to ask you if you have any thoughts on things that I should be doing, and just say, I can't think of anything. We'll just role play from there. So Quinn, when you think about what an agent needs to do in today's marketplace, the things that they need to do on a daily basis to get a home sold, what an agent would have to do to get your home sold, what do you think the things are that they would have to do?
John, I really don't know.
Okay. You know what, Quinn, that's fair. I mean, you've never sold a home before. This is your first one. And the good news is that I'm an expert. I've been doing this for years. And my company, my heavens, we sell 6,000 homes a year. And how many homes do you need to sell?
Just one.
Just one. So there's no question we can get it sold. But let me ask you this. If you could guess, if there was anything that you might guess at in terms of what an agent might have to do, what do you think are some of the things that an agent might have to do in today's marketplace? And again, just say, John, I don't know.
John, I don't know.
Okay, that's fair enough. So let me ask you this. Do you think communication would be important?
Yeah, I would think that.
Okay, and I would agree with you. So when you say you think it would be important, tell me more about that. Why do you think it would be important? How would it be important?
I think it would be important, just so I know what's going on with my own home with the showings and what to expect.
Okay, so what I really hear you saying is that you don't want to be left in the dark. You want to know what to expect, and you really want to know what's going on.
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely want to be knowing those things.
Okay, so what would you like that to look like? I mean, what sort of information would you want to have?
Well, yeah, I'd like to know how many showings happened, throughout the week, if we have any offers, and just I'd like to know if from you if there's anything that we need to change in the home or improve.
Okay, all right, that's great. Quinn, I love this. The fact that you've got these ideas. You are so far ahead of what most people think or say in this conversation. So you want to know more about the showings. You want to know, I wrote this down. You want to know more about any potential offers. And you also want to know if we need to change the approach at all to make certain that we can actually get your home sold in the time that you want, so we can get you and your family to St. George. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, that's spot on.
Okay, that's great. And I think that's absolutely reasonable. So what's the best way to communicate with you? Would you prefer a text, a phone call, an email, or a combination of those things? And how often would you like to communicate and get that information?
I would be okay with a phone call.
Okay.
How often do you think I should be getting updated? Like once a week, once every other week?
Well, I mean, Quinn, this is such an important conversation, and the market is changing so dramatically. And the fact is that, I mean, the hope is that we're getting multiple showings a week, right? And I got to
Right.
imagine that you don't want to wait a couple of weeks or 3 weeks between updates, right? So it seems like, to your point,
No.
that every week would probably make sense, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do every
So-
week.
So if we were having a weekly call on a designated day at a designated time, and I was giving you updates on the showings that we've had, what the agents are saying about the home who are showing it, also what their clients are saying, and then also I'm giving you an update on all the activities online and the response that we're getting online, plus giving you an update on all of my activities in terms of prospecting, the number of people I'm talking to and how those conversations are going. Would that meet your expectations in terms of being up to date and knowing what's going on?
Oh yeah, that exceeds them.
Okay, that's great, awesome. And then if we were having that conversation based upon that, and then we could talk about how we need to adjust our approach, if at all, to make certain that we stay on schedule to get your home sold in the time that you want, so we can get you to St. George. Would it be like firing on all cylinders, cooking with gas?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Great. All right. So if your decision to work with me hinged solely on communication, I mean, I know there are other things that we need to talk about, but if it was just communication, how do you feel about us working together?
I feel great with just the communication.
All right. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 meaning not confident at all, John, 10 meaning no, very confident. I'm ready to get started if it were just about communication.
10.
10. Perfect. That's great. Now, gang, what I would do is I would just go back to the other things that I isolated with Quinn about the things that are important to him. So he may have said to me that marketing was important. So then I would revisit that and say, so Quinn, you said marketing was important. Tell me more about that. When you say it's important to you, what do you mean? And then we're going to have the same conversation that we just had about communication, but we're going to now have that with marketing. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Notice what I did. I summed all of that up by saying, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, how do you feel? 1 meaning not confident, 10 meaning confident. I demand, I need, I insist on a 10 from him. And if I can't get a 10, then we've got to revisit the reasons why he doesn't feel comfortable with our approach that we've talked about in terms of communication. Remember, gang, the only reason people are unwilling to sign a contract is because they have unanswered questions. They feel uncertain. So we don't want to leave anything untouched. So we always want to go back to, is there anything else? And if he gives me an answer of 7, 8, or 9, I'm going to say, obviously, there's something we didn't talk about or that we did that you don't feel comfortable about. Share with me, what is that, so that we can get you a 10? Because Quinn, you deserve a 10. You deserve 100% certainty that working with me is going to get your home sold so we can get you and your family to St. George, right?
Right.
Right. So then let's talk about why you're only at a 7, 8, or a 9. And then he's going to share with me why. And then we're going to clarify that. We're going to restructure it so that it meets his expectations. And I'm going to ask him again. So now how do you feel now that we've addressed that particular concern? And he should say a what? He should say a 10. And if we can get them to say a 10 on each of those individual things that they expect, then the inevitable is what? That they're going to what? They're going to sign a contract. Okay. Once we've done all of that, gang, then we just move into part 2, which is the easiest part. It really is. And you might say, well, that's not my experience. The second part, which consists of this, write this down at the top in the upper right-hand corner, MVP, M is in Mary or market, M is in market, V is in Victor or value, and P is in paperwork. So MVP. That is the easy part, in my opinion. The first part, that's the more challenging part, where you got to be really practiced. You got to be a great conversationalist. You got to ask a lot of questions, discover. You got to repeat and affirm. You got to lead people through the process. But once you've done that and you use that, what I call that transitional close on a scale from 1 to 10, how do you feel about us working together, right? And they ultimately say a 10, then it's easy to talk about the market, where it's been, where it is, and where it is, where it's going in the next 60 to 90 days. And then it's easy to work together as a team to determine the price. You just look at the comparables, right? And then it's inevitable. It's kind of a logical conclusion to a great conversation is this, we're just going to sign the paperwork. Gang, I have had people literally say to me before we even get to that point at that transitional close where they say to me, well, that's great. Should we just sign some paperwork, or did you bring the contract for us to sign? I've literally had people do that before we ever get to talking about the price or what the commission is. If you've got people so fixated on what your commission is or what the price is going to be on their home, I'm telling you, you haven't built enough rapport or value in the conversation. It doesn't mean that value or the price of the home isn't important to them, but at this point, they know that they want to work with you. That they know. It's not a question of are we going to work with you. Now it's a question of, okay, what's the price going to be? And how long, John, do you think it's going to take us to get the home sold? Does that make sense? Okay, so any thoughts, any questions or clarifications on this?
This is really excellent. I mean, I've heard this a lot, but you're taking more time and really dissecting this, and we just really appreciate it.
Rebecca, you are very welcome. I enjoy doing this. And gang, I'll just tell you, this is so important to your success in real estate. Gang, you guys are your professional communicators, whether you want to acknowledge that or not. And the more you look at yourself as a professional communicator and act as such, and you practice your skill of communicating and having conversations, particularly within the context of listings or getting a buyer broker agreement signed, because it's the same structure for a buyer broker agreement. If you guys will get this pattern memorized, and the structure memorized, and have these conversations, I promise you, you're not going to get the resistance, the level of resistance that you are getting in these conversations, whether you're prospecting or you're sitting down with people. I get the fact that you might be getting a high degree of resistance and people saying, well, this one agent said they're going to do it for 4% and you're saying that yours is 6%. I'm telling you, the greater the objections we get, it tells me we have not done a great job of building rapport or value. The higher the rapport and the higher the value, the higher the chance is that they're going to sign the agreement. The lower rapport and the lower the value, the lower the chance is that they're going to sign the agreement. So if you want to increase your chances of getting the contract signed, increase the value and the rapport that you build in your conversation. And that is done primarily in that first phase of the listing conversation. So any other questions or observations before we wrap it up, gang?
Well, I want to know if this is Rebecca again. Is there a way that you recorded today?
It is recorded. And if Russ is listening, we can find out from Russ how you guys can access this. Russ?
Yeah, it'll be put up on the YouTube channel later today.
Okay. And will it be a particular title they need to type in, or how will they best find it?
It'll be the coaching call from today's date, and I'll put listing presentation conversation.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay. Awesome. Okay. All right, gang. Well, great job in being on the call. Thank you for letting me go over. It's an important enough conversation that I felt like it was worth doing it. So I appreciate you hanging around. Okay, remember, Summit